Good
Hey, good.
afternoon.
Well, it's morning here in Colorado, Rochelle, so good morning to you.
What
Um,
time is it in Colorado?
it is just after 10 a.m.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I did not know that. This is not too early, is it?
No, gosh, no.
Absolutely.
I do get up before 10.
Well, it is a Saturday. Some of us like to sleep in on a Saturday, so you never know. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me today. May I ask you to please tell us your name?
Yes, my name is Maire Martin, and I usually have to tell people how to pronounce my name because once you see it spelled, people usually find that challenging. So what I tell people is it's Marade rhymes with parade, and that
I love
usually
it.
works. So
Absolutely. It's a
I'm
very, very unique name. Where did you, is it more from where you are in the region, or were your parents very creative and came up with the name?
no, it's quite a common name in Ireland. I'm originally from Ireland, and many of our names are Gaelic, and so in fact, Mairead means Margaret in Irish.
Okay.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and
Beautiful.
yeah, thank you. A lot of folks know the singer Sinead O'Connor,
Yes.
and Sinead is Jane, Mairead is Margaret.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. May I ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, be
Anything you
happy
feel
to.
comfortable.
And Rochelle, thanks for inviting me to chat with you. I mean, uh, you know, I'm currently the VP and CIO at Educause, and what I'm going to talk about today is really my own personal and professional journey. I have colleagues at Educause who are, for want of a better word, DEI experts, and they speak on behalf of Educause about DEI because it's a big priority for us. So I don't, as I said to you when you first reached out to me, I don't promise to be that. I don't present myself as that, but I can certainly speak to what I've learned about DIIO, what I'm continuing to learn, and how I feel about it, and different experiences I've had personally and professionally that have informed that. So, as I've said, I was born in Ireland, and
Excuse me, just one second, Marie. Let
sure,
me just say, so I don't, these are just people's stories. They're
yeah,
not about diversity. So I don't want anyone to come on and proclaim to be a diversity expert, because I don't think any of us are that. We have our
good,
experiences. Even
yeah,
when you have a diversity officer, you have people in your organizations that are well versed in diversity.
that's right.
Diversity is an ongoing learning process. So none of us are experts. And what we are is we're learning as we go. But my chats are simply just the stories of people. How did you get where you are? How did you decide to go into IT? Things that are just unique to you and how you became who you are. Because what I hope these conversations show, one, is that diversity is not a barrier. It's
Yeah,
not an inhibitor to being something. You just have to be bold and intentional. And then the other thing I want people to know is there are people out there like you. They all started somewhere. They all have a story to tell. And the
yeah,
more these stories are told, the more people can grow from them, because we all learn something from each other's stories. So I don't expect you to be a DEI expert or anything. I expect you to tell us about Marie. Tell us everything you can about Marie.
great. That's great context. So, I grew up in Ireland and was educated there. I lived there until I was probably 20 when I finished college. And then at the time, the 1980s was really economically in Ireland, it was a very bad time. And so most of us emigrated. And that, of course, is part of the Irish experience, something that has been happening for generations and decades there. And I left Ireland, as I say, in 84, and I spent about 10 years um, satisfying my desire to travel. And so I was an English language teacher in Europe first, and then I spent 5 years in Japan as well. And so I was doing two things. I love languages and I love traveling, and so I was doing that. But also I was in that, when you have an arts degree, it's not always clear what you're going to do. And so I was spending that time thinking, well, what am I going to do? And so I actually came to the States in 95. And at the time, and so this is, when people relate, how do they end up in IT? Well, mostly coincidence or accident. So at the time when I came to the United States, I did not have a green card, so I thought I will apply for one. And meanwhile, I'll go to grad school here. And so I went to grad school at the University of Tennessee, and my program was information sciences. And I was very fortunate in that I got a graduate assistantship to the dean of the school, and she also happened to be the interim CIO. So I was working in her interim CIO office for the most part. So I honestly, I didn't know anything about IT. I thought Microsoft Word was an operating system. Now, I know it isn't now, but that's as much as I knew, and I can admit that now. But what I was doing was, of course, in grad school, you do a lot of writing, you do a lot of presenting, and then information sciences is all about the user experience. It's about service to the end user. So uh, I then, was working on a couple of projects in the IT department that were to do with, grant writing, presenting and things. And then the dean, interim CIO, her successor said to me, "Hey, when you graduate, would you like a job?" And I said, "Sure," because actually I'm being honest here, I didn't intend to go down the traditional librarian path. I was in grad school because I didn't have a green card. I ended up liking the program an awful lot and got a heck of a lot out of it and never regretted doing it. But I wasn't getting ready to go into an academic library or public library or any of those tracks. So I was very happy to go into IT. And then at the time too, and we're talking about the late 90s, it was really sort of like that boom time in IT, right? So networks, internet 2, microcomputers, labs, everything was just starting really to take off. But a lot of my colleagues uh, didn't like presenting, didn't like speaking publicly, didn't want to write or didn't have experience writing. And so I ended up doing that. And that actually is one of the requirements to get on a management track too, right? Is that it's not just about the technical side or the engineering side, but rather can you bring these other skills to bear? And so I ended up getting on a manager track, and that's the story of how someone who didn't know about IT ended up in IT. And then I worked at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville for 3 to 5 years. And then I went to work at Wisconsin-Madison. I spent 3 years there. And then I went on to Penn State. And my position there initially was supporting IT in the libraries, which was a nice combination of my educational background and the fact that I was getting into technical or IT leadership. So that's how I ended up in IT. I do know more about IT now than I used to, but but I'm the first person to say that I'm not in it because I love IT. I mean, I don't stay awake at night thinking about new programs or emerging technologies, to be honest. What I found out about myself, which kind of surprised me, was that the thing that I like most about it is organizational culture, people, developing people. And there has been, and there still is, tons of opportunities to do that, and tons of a lot of need to do that. So that's been what's kept me in higher ed IT. And it's something that I love. And as I say, it kind of surprised me.
So let me ask you the first joke, if you will. Have you mastered y'all yet?
Yeah. Oh, I used to say y'all, and I used to also say ma'am and sir. I picked it up in Tennessee, and when I got to Wisconsin, we were like, "Please don't call me ma'am. Why are you calling me ma'am?" But yes.
Absolutely. So my children and most people I know intimately call me ma'am and say yes ma'am and yes sir and no sir and no ma'am. So that's wonderful. But I really love the y'all. So I was born in New York City at Brooklyn, and
Yeah,
I was raised in the South. So I never quite mastered the word you all. So it was always you all, not
all
y'all.
y'all.
Uh, but I do love the word, and I love Southern culture because it's such a um it's unique. It's not like, so even if you grew up in South Carolina and you were raised in Tennessee or say Alabama, so it's two different Southern cultures, right?
That's
And
right.
so
That's
I
right.
grew up in a part of South Carolina where I grew up. There was something called Geechee, and that's what a lot of the post-slaves and people who grew up in that rural part, a damp part, low country part of South
Yeah,
Carolina.
it's
Folk,
fascinating.
so it's a lot of interesting things. So it's really, really good. And before we end, I do have a question to ask you. We're not asking while we're on this recording. Okay, so
Sure.
let me ask you this. So you got into this IT track. Did you think about any other careers while you were going down the IT rabbit hole, or did you say, okay, this is it, I know I can do this really well?
I'll be honest, if I had to do it all again, there were some decisions I made as I was doing my undergraduate work, which you're not really qualified to make when you're 17 or 18. And I think I would have liked to have stayed in academia. And there's part of me that just really can dig into a subject and be very productive around that subject. But that said, there are lots of opportunities to write in our area too.
Yeah.
Now, I never have any time to write, but I love writing. And so and of course, you don't have to be in a formal education track to pursue academic subjects. But I think that's the one area. Otherwise, not so much. I don't feel any hankering. And I honestly don't feel any hankering to go into the private sector for IT either.
Yeah.
I
And
really
I
don't.
think that's a very, very important thing. I mean, the interesting thing about higher education is its potential, right? So
Yeah.
what we have the potential to do. And while elementary education has the same potential to change lives, we are at a point where people are at adults. They're no longer young. And for the most part, we hope that their mindset is formed in a way that they can think and make decisions for themselves. What higher education offers is the promise of better.
Yeah.
Whatever better may mean to you, whether it's a better paying job, whether it's a place where you go. So it's just that kind of stuff right there. But I also think higher education is also in this prime place where it does need to be reshaped. And we assume that people learn exactly the same.
That's right.
That's not true.
No.
We assume that people come for the same motivations. That's not true. When you're in elementary education, it's forced. You don't have a choice. You have to go. But as an adult, you could change. You could quit. You could change your degree. You could go another different path. And so higher education really needs to pay attention to what its potential is, as opposed to thinking about our agrarian days where we're farmers and trying to learn how to be better farmers and to protect the family wealth. We need to think about education and all the possibilities, and specifically in IT, that here's this area that is really poised to disrupt everything we knew.
Yes.
So the fact that we've had the Internet of Things, or IoTs, should be mind-blowing to people, because your refrigerator can order eggs for you now. Your car can drive itself. You can turn your security system on. This is a relatively new area, and it doesn't have a lot of legislation around it. It doesn't have a lot of rules and guidelines about it. Anybody can do it. There's some vulnerabilities to it. You don't know who's collecting your data and where your data is going, because now it's no longer a computer or a device in your house that's collecting that data. It's going out into the nether to whoever is farming it out, probably to a cloud service, but nonetheless.
Yep.
But IT has this great potential, and everybody should know a little bit about it. You don't have to be an IT expert. You don't.
No, you don't. You really don't.
You need to know how to manage your own identity, right? Because identity theft is high, right?
Yep.
So you need to know a little bit about email and phishing and spam and viruses. You need to know a little bit about that.
You do.
So I think that what you do and your path to get there is a very salient one, because really, here's a person who wasn't starting out. I don't want to be an IT CIO, or I'm not going to run out the front door to be in charge of IT. I kind of got in this place by happenstance or serendipity. So here I am, and I'm here now, and look at what I'm doing to change the world. Anybody could do that. Yours is not a unique story. It's not like, oh my God, just Maire could do that. No one else in the
No, that's right. That's right.
Your story can be emulated over and over again. And I think the way you tell it with such honesty and clarity is very, very helpful for people to know. I am just a regular human being who went this way, and look at what happened to me. That's pretty powerful, Maire. That's pretty powerful.
Well, and I'll have to admit too, though, Rochelle, is, you know, uh, part of the, actually saying, I got on the management track, but saying, I want to be a CIO. Part of it was to do with seeing other leaders um, make bad decisions and have poor judgment and really not be empathetic towards their staff, etc. And thinking, well, you know what, I'm going to have to be that. I'm going to have to be in that position to have that amount of influence and power, so that at least I don't have to experience that myself, and I can make sure that people don't experience that. Yeah.
That's pretty wonderful.
Yeah.
That's pretty wonderful. So,
Yeah.
so let me ask you a question. So in the grand scheme of things, now that you're there, what are the issues that you see that are facing women and underrepresented or marginalized people in IT and in higher education?
So, well, first of all, and you know, when I started in IT, and I described to you the late 90s, the prevailing culture then, the dominant culture was white male.
It still is.
It still is, right? But then the behaviors were, the hierarchy was around, are you technical or are you not technical? Now, clearly I wasn't technical. I'm sure there was a lot of eye rolling about me, but I didn't care, to be honest. And it didn't stop me. It didn't stop my ascent. It didn't stop me being productive and enjoying my job. So what I have seen over the years is I've seen that still, it's still present, and I've saw it in and it's counterproductive for lots of reasons. But as our organizations mature, what I saw a lot was, we got project managers and service managers and architects and UX people, and we have all these disciplines to really mature what we do. And I saw an awful lot of, oh yeah, but they're not technical enough. But they weren't hired to be the engineer with, up to their elbows in grease. That was not why they were hired. But that tag or that prejudice was still used to exclude them.
Yeah.
And of course, so happened that many of those individuals were female.
Yeah.
And so it was a double whammy. It was like saying, well, she's not technical enough. But as I also, so there's that. So I always, when I hear that not technical enough, I'm always suspicious. I mean, unless you're looking for, an Azure engineer and they have absolutely no experience in the cloud or Azure, well, that's a whole different story. But when you hear, and of course, as women ascend and get to the CIO suite, the C-suite, it's still lobbied at us.
Right.
We still get it. And recruiters will tell you too, honestly, executive recruiters will tell you that they see candidates for CIO positions, female and male, being treated differently. And the female, sometimes, that comes, is she technical enough? Well, she's got this, and this, but is she technical enough? And your job is not to fix technology or to be technical enough. That's not why they're hiring you, but they'll still ask it about you because you're female, and because there's a suspicion that somehow because you're female, you're not technical enough. So what I have experienced, when I see that, I close it down as quickly as I can. But I know that I also have, it's happened to me in job searches, and I've seen it when I hiring or advancing women, and I'm talking to their references. I'll see it comes up again, and people will say, oh, yeah, she's great and she's a fabulous manager, but I asked somebody and somebody said she's not technical enough. And it's like, it's so irrelevant, and it's harmful, it's disrespectful, but it's still happening. Don't you think so?
Absolutely. And what's really more important about that is even the best expert, so you take a CISO or somebody who's extremely technical, that person is not an expert because the environment is constantly changing.
That's
it's
right.
Not like it's fixed. So we're going to go up and we're going to create honeypots and we're only going to use Cisco and we're going to do these things and it's just fixed. This is the way it is. It's not. New players are coming to the market, new technology is coming to the market, and so you're constantly learning. And if the gauge is you're going to measure people with is how technical they are, then all of us would be subjective to how technical we are because something has changed. So if you think about cloud services, when Amazon first came out with this, people thought they were crazy. I'm not going to put my stuff in the cloud. What? That's crazy. And now all the big companies are trying to become players in the cloud game.
Yeah, that's right.
And so if you were an Amazon cloud person, cloud expert, and you look over there at Azure, what? That's not the same cloud. It doesn't have the same technology. It uses different languages. It might use the same framework, but it uses different languages. If you're going to go the IBM route, if you're going to go the Google route or Microsoft route, whatever route it is you're going to go, you could say I'm a cloud expert, meaning I understand how cloud technologies work. I understand the components of cloud. But can you sit back and say I'm an Amazon cloud expert for this day? Yes. Tomorrow, maybe not. So I think that's an unfair measure to ask someone, are they technical enough? Because I know CIOs that don't even know what the hell a data center is. You know, they're going, what is that? But they run a big organization. They've got all these important people that report to them. And as long as you create the right team, the team continues to grow. They go to training, they go to conferences, they interact with their colleagues on other institutions. I think that you get enough technical knowledge that you can handle almost any situation that comes up. But to say someone an expert is absurd. I think that's just really unfair, especially to women and Black and brown people, because there's a lot of assumptions about what we know and what we don't know. So we're still struggling as women to break into the mold, right? So in the number of CIOs, how many female CIOs do you know? Just in general, how many?
I'd say a handful.
Right. So, and then there are hundreds, maybe even hundreds of thousands of male CIOs. Why? Because there's an assumption that men don't bring emotion to work, that they're smarter, they're more agile. And I don't know if any of that, right. And I don't know if any of that's true. I don't know that any of that's true. There are some women who go into a company and they know it from top to bottom. They put their heads down and they just get it. And there are some men that do the same thing, but I don't think you can measure either by what they did, because just as being a woman, and this may be a bit biased on my part, think about how many things you do in any given moment, right? So you are a provider, you're a cook, you're a cleaner, you're a designer, you are an accountant. You have all of these roles that you manage every single day in your daily personal life. Not in your job, but just, you know, you made this salary and you got to go to the grocery store and buy groceries, or you got to go buy something. You learn how to manage your money, right? And you learn how to manage your money to the point that you can pitch pennies to make it work, right? Or you learn how to cook, that you can cook without a recipe book. You know, all of this gained just by being female, that you learn.
And that's the second point when you asked me about the challenges facing women. So so we have foundational challenges in IT, and the problem is, will women stay in our organizations long enough to become CIO? Probably not. They'll probably say, to heck with this. Then the second problem I'm seeing right now is that in the last, obviously with the pandemic, and women are working at home, they're managing their children at home as well, they're homeschooling, they're doing everything. And so women have had to be superhuman, and now they have to be superhuman.
Right.
And it was a really good discussion at the Educause Women in IT group in the last few weeks. And that's what I came away feeling about, is a recognition that, you know, it was tough for women, particularly women with young children, but women with any children, but you know, if you had to homeschool children and do everything else, and you had to adapt to that, and to adapt to it, you had to even try harder. It didn't seem like there was any give in our work environments. I know we all said, well, let's acknowledge that it's hard and everything, but I didn't hear or see evidence that organizations had necessarily changed to adapt to what women had to adapt to, but rather the stress to the point of nearly trauma for women some women over the last year. It means that maybe there is evidence that some women are saying, "Mm, I can't do it. I can't stay in IT and higher ed and do all of this. I have to."
Right, choose.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
So
And so people have questioned all the time about the leaking pipeline in STEM, but it absolutely is. You know,
yeah, it
you
is.
get to the point where I can only take so much abuse in a given period of time, right? So all the things, so and this is true coming from male leaders and female leaders. They can be extremely critical and harsh of women,
Yes.
extremely so. And to the point where you go into your supervisor's office and you leave, and on your way out of the door, you're thinking, I can just get my car and go home because it's not worth what they're paying me to go through this, to have someone demean me, for someone to say, hey, I have to micromanage you, or you're not that smart, or you're not whatever it is, that someone would take the time to say that. And I do not believe any of us is not smart. It's just some
Yeah,
of us are better at some things than others.
that's right.
So don't ask me to go outside and build a deck or to build a house. I'm going to be terrible at that. I don't even know if I know how to get a hammer to hit a nail on the head. That's just not my area of expertise. I don't have that strength. I never claim to either. But don't tell me I can't do it, because I'm going to go out there and try.
Yeah.
And until I have failed at it, you can't say I couldn't build a house. It's just, that's not it's not something I've done before. And I think that when women come in, so you're too young to probably know this, but there was a while, in the 70s and early part of 80s, a lot of women who had been homemakers came into the
Yes.
workforce.
Right.
And so a lot of companies were looking for ways to take those skills that they had in the home place and apply them to the workplace. So in other words, like we were just talking about, so you can cook, you can clean, you can do you can micromanage a lot of tasks.
Yeah.
People who are having children at home and still having to do a full-time job and managing their home, and you're able to micro multitask and then do a lot of things. So today what we do is we now look at that harshly. Well, Joe over there has been at work since 6 o'clock this morning and he's accomplished X, Y, and Z. Well, that woman is done the same thing. It's just done in a different way. You could just look at Joe's results and see, so on his tack board or wherever he's written all the things he's done today. We may not have done that, but we've done the exact same thing. So I think that the way we manage women and Black and brown people is to see what's wrong before we see what's right.
That's a good point. I
You
think you're
know,
right. I
yeah,
think you're right. Yeah.
to see what's wrong before we see what's right. So
Yeah.
I think that, again, I go back and say what I said earlier. Your story is absolutely phenomenal, because one, you went into a field where you hadn't been in there for 40 or 50 years. This wasn't the first thing you wanted to do, and you've gone in and you're the CIO of a major organization that has an amazing impact on the larger community. That's pretty powerful. And I think, one, you should be proud of you. I'm certainly proud of you.
Thank
But
you.
you should also think, I am exactly what women need to see. I am a good role model. Look at me and look at my journey. And that's why these stories are so important to me, because not that we're talking about that you're a woman from Ireland, or, but the point is here's an example of life, example, success.
Yep.
It's just beautiful. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Well, and so what I think we're getting, well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that, but I think we're getting better to, well, I think women know what we're getting better at helping each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
And being allies and advocates and champions for each other. But it's concerning that that, as you mentioned, as you call it, the leaking pipeline, it's there, and the pandemic has just exacerbated it. It's made things much more stressful. Well, and then of course, everything that's been happening in our society also, and the fact that your experience of everyday life is so much different from mine in terms of trauma, frankly, and the last few years, I think we all felt worn because we were seeing it in front of us all the time. And that's been part of my education. Coming to the United States as an immigrant, you understand certain things and you're told certain things about the United States. exceptionalism, for example. Everybody can get ahead. And when you look at my story, I'm very grateful for what I have been able to accomplish in the United States. But what I've learned on the way is um, my skin color has helped enormously with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I identify as lesbian, but that wasn't enough for them to stop me, because I was easily, English is my first language, and I'm white,
Right.
and I'm well educated.
Right.
Right. So I have that privilege, and I didn't understand about systemic racism when I came here. Absolutely did not understand it at all. And I remember being in Tennessee in the late 90s, and an individual out of nowhere, we weren't discussing it, but it certainly wasn't appropriate for us to be discussing it. He said to me, oh, I just wish those Black people would get jobs. Everybody's on welfare. And I was just blown away. But what had helped me, his saying that helped me realize, well, wait a minute, 5 minutes ago, they were slaves. And you expect them then to have this, you expect them to have what you've had, and to be as privileged as you and I are. So it was his comment helped me to open my eyes. But I like a lot of white people, I thought when Obama became president that racism was over. I honestly thought that. I was so naive. So it's been sobering. It's been it's horrible. It's horrible to realize the state of things. It's not. We have a long way to go, and it's just. It's not even that. We have a violent racist society. It's not even, oh, we don't all get a leg up. We don't all get. We have two systems of policing. We have two systems of justice, incarceration of people of color. It's just, when you open your eyes and look at it, and of course, there's also I'm not allowed to talk about it, because if you talk about it, it's political, which is, it's crazy. This is our society. And, and interestingly, Rochelle, people do say to me, oh, you must feel so lucky to be living in the United States and everything that you've accomplished here. And I can't, I have to be honest and say, but this isn't a perfect society. I'm not looking around and thinking, oh, isn't this great? It's so much better than Ireland and so much better. It's far from perfect, but I'm not going home. Oh, I've been told to go home, by the way. I've been told many times, we don't want you here. We didn't ask you to come here. You should go home. And I'm not going home. And people say to me when Trump was elected, oh, you'll probably want to go home now. No, I'm not going home. Let him go home. I'm not going home,
Let me share something with you. I'm going to compare you and I side by side. So I
Yeah.
don't know how you are, but I'm assuming you're fairly young.
No, actually, I'm not. I'm not, as long as I have Irish skin, so I look young.
Okay, I like it. But
yeah.
but I am 62.
I'm 57.
Okay, thank you. We are closer in age than I thought.
We are closer, yeah.
But I started in IT when I was 17. I was a computer operator. I've been a programmer, project manager, a network designer. I've been a web programmer. I mean, like, been a security. I mean, if you name it in IT, I have done it.
Yeah.
In one way or the other.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
So in reality, I should be a CIO, but no one has ever seen that quality in me, because one, I've not had the title officially. I have lost interest in doing all the backflips and hops people want you to do to apply for a CIO job. And when last year I decided I was only going to be a CIO or a CTO, I wasn't going to take any other job. I wasn't. I don't care what people were offering. Okay, how much you were paying. I wasn't. But at some point, I got to the point where I started down that path.
Yeah.
I had to prove myself every single day. And I've been doing that my whole career. I'm not interested in that. And I don't feel sorry for myself at all. I am very blessed and very privileged. I've had a great career. I've worked for some amazing companies. I mean, it's just a wonderful thing. But the point is that my Black skin, my nose, my lips, my ears, my hair say more about me than anything I've ever done. Anything
Yeah.
I've ever done. Because I am measured by what I look like. And what's really deafening about that to me is that between any ethnicity, I don't care what it is, there is only less than 2% difference in those ethnicities. So somebody's hair is different, someone's nose is different, someone else has some feature or something that's different. But in reality, humanity is almost a replica of itself with certain deviations. And I think that if
So,
you look outside your house, you walk outside your door and look at the trees and the grass and the flowers and all the things, so you can see a rose. There's a giant rose, a small rose, a miniature rose. There's all kind of roses. There's all kind of colors of roses, but it's still a rose.
mm,
We are humans. We are still human. A black human, a white human, a brown human, a yellow human, a red human, whatever color, we're still human. And the fact that we tie so much to things that are beyond our control, I would hazard a guess that you would not like to have all that gray hair in your hair. I certainly would not like to have, but that's what nature gave me. What am I going to do? I'm not going to dye it or color it. I mean, it must be some reason why it turned this color. So, but somebody's going to decide that I'm old because I have gray hair. Someone's going to decide that my age is an impediment.
But a man with gray hair is wise.
Wise, absolutely, so. Absolutely. He is seasoned, yes. Where I am not. And I think that what society has to look at, in addition to the barbaric, inhumane treatment of certain people, like in the last week, we have seen a shooting at a facility where people work. We've seen a 13-year-old little boy shot dead. We have seen a boy in his car shot dead, a man in his car, I guess. We have seen all types of violence for reasons that are sometimes illogical. So why did that man go to that facility and shoot those 8 people? What was he thinking? He did not create any of them, but yet still he felt he had the power to take it. The person who is supposed to protect and serve me, and as a Black parent, I have 2 children. I worry about every single day. Will they make it home tonight if they go out? So my son he's an introvert like his mother in a lot of ways. He likes to hide behind his screen. But every once in a while he gets the urge to go get something to eat, which I have no idea. We have delivery service now. Why? But anyway, and I start praying the minute he walks up to, I hear the door click. I start praying, please come home. Because the groups of mothers who have lost their children, I can't even imagine what that must be like. I cannot imagine what it must be to lose, but that could happen to me. I have a daughter. My daughter's older. My son is a college student, but my daughter's older. The same thing. I start praying when she goes out, and she's always going somewhere. I'm praying, please God, let her make it home. Because, if the police pull you over, you might worry, well, how much is this ticket going to cost me? What is this about? Do I have something wrong with my car? What is it? If you left your purse at home and your license is on the bed or something like that, you're not going to worry. Well,
that's right. That's right.
We don't have that same luxury.
No. I depend on everything being reasonable.
Right.
Because I live in a reasonable world. And so my expectation is not that things would escalate to a point where I'd be asked to get out of the car and put my hands behind my head. I don't have to think about that at all. But for people of color, it's a war zone.
It's a war zone.
It's a war zone.
You're constantly worried about how. And so now I've got to fight to survive. Like I told someone this not too long ago. There's a book and a movie written by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and it says Between the World and Me.
And it's great. I've read it. Yeah, it's excellent.
What about me belongs to me? This is not my name. Okay, so people call me Rochelle, Dr. Rochelle. That's not my name. That's the name that somebody decided I should have that fits in the society of what name should be. So like your name, beautiful name, and it has another translation. My name is an American, and a lot of Black people call that my government name. I have a government ID. I have all these things. And at any moment, a white person could take it from me just like that. You take away my job. You could wake up in the morning, you could say, you call me Rochelle, we're firing you. Okay, we're eliminating your position. Okay. Now that could happen to anybody, right? So everybody says, well, that could happen to any of us. What's the likelihood of it happening to me versus happening to you? More likely to happen to me. because I sit in a certain place. Wealth and economics show I've not made it to where I've got $100,000 in savings. You know, hell, I'm lucky if I have $1,000 in savings sometimes, you know. So my wealth, my future, our path to the future to economic prosperity varies at various times, right? I had a child that was very, very sick, cost me a fortune in medical care. So there were my savings. That's a judgment against me. So if I were to file bankruptcy, or if I were to be
Yeah,
economically, that would be judged against me because I obviously can't manage money. You know, you got to have something to manage it to begin with,
that's
you know.
right.
But the stigmas that are in our society are unfair for a lot of reasons. They're unfair to women. I mean, it's just simply unfair to women. Women should have the same opportunities as anybody else. We are not second class citizens. We are not less than, you know,
Mhm.
regardless of our sexual orientation, regardless to our roles and place in society. We are still human beings, and we need to be respected and treated as such, not judged for it, not penalized for it, but to actually be appreciated this person is. To look at someone like you, I mean, like, so I wanted to ask this question. So there's always been, and I mean, like, I'm a history buff, so I already
Sure.
know the answer to my question, but you know, like the relationship between Britain and Ireland, right? So
Yeah.
one country can colonize another or to control another country, you know, like, and as sooner or later the country says, I can't take this anymore, so you know, they break free and become their own thing. This
Yeah.
is the logic of that is true for human beings too. You
Mhm.
can't continue to colonize me and expect me to stay dormant and to accept that, you know. So I want to ask, so when you grew up, was Ireland always free from Britain? There was no entanglement between the two?
So I grew up in the Republic of Ireland, and the it had gained independence in about 1920-21, and so it was Irish. But the northern part of Ireland remained with the UK, what they call Northern Ireland, and that was about gosh, 60 miles away from where I grew up. We never went there. Um, we, because of the what we call the troubles, the violence at the time, but also because Catholics, which most of Ireland at the time was Catholic, Catholics crossing the border felt they would be harassed, and they were. If you had a certain license plate on your car, your accent, your name, my name obviously would have been identified as Catholic Irish. So um, I think too, when my parents were growing up, they would never have visited Northern Ireland. That it was certainly not felt like a welcoming place. And then, of course, that all blew up literally in the 70s, where the sectarianism just the Catholics couldn't take it anymore. And so they've come a long way. But I have to tell you too, Rochelle, and I know you talked to my colleague Helen Norris recently, and Helen and I have chatted off and on about growing up in Ireland. We're essentially the same generation. There weren't any people of color. There were only us, people with pink skin. And when I was growing up too, oh, the Irish are great. We're not racist at all. And that was because there were no other races. But the beautiful thing that happened in the 90s was, when the Berlin Wall came down, a lot of Eastern Europeans were free to travel and to go to work abroad. And Ireland had an economic boom in the 90s, what they call the Celtic Tiger. And so for the first time, we had reverse immigration. We had Irish people going home to work. We had lots of immigrants. And at one point in the 90s, they said that there was more than 100 languages being spoken in Dublin. What a beautiful thing, right? The beauty and of complexity, not saying, oh, we're all the same, and having your life be like this instead of being like this. Um, so, uh, yes, the Irish have always been racist, because actually there's racism everywhere. But at least now it's a multicultural society, and it's a great thing because of it.
Yeah. I don't think I think that they are. I think that within every society, there exists a certain amount of bias, a certain amount of prejudice that exists in every society for whatever reason it exists. I bet you could see the difference between people who lived in Northern Ireland and other parts of Ireland, that don't like each other for reasons that are probably illogical as all get out. But, the fact that we have our biases about people, like the different accents that people speak, do you have a
Yeah.
brogue, do you speak different ways? All of these things kind of, pow on to how we think about people. I don't think it's necessarily organic racism. I think it's just,
Oh,
what do I know? What do
yeah.
I know?
Well, and I think too, when the Irish came to the United States, like in the middle of the 19th century, they demonstrated a lot of racism against people of color, because it actually served people who had power and privilege that was the case.
Absolutely.
It served them well that so there always has to be somebody at the bottom of the,
Always.
yeah. And so the best thing to do is to keep groups fighting, and and so anyway, but I think, has our conversation made you feel more depressed, less depressed, hopeful?
So I think, I do one of these at least 2 or 3 times a week. And I
Do you
will tell
really?
you,
That's a lot. Wow,
I
good.
know it is a lot. And I will tell you, it is mind altering. I never was a terribly optimistic person, but I think since I began these, and I began these early last year, I have felt almost like I'm having part of my soul tore out of me, when I have these chats, because, it's just so much pain and
Yeah.
so much hurt. Even as you describe what it's like to be a woman in IT or be a woman in your field, that's painful to hear, because imagine if it's happening to you, can you imagine what's happening to me?
Yeah.
So, I'm really grateful to have them, but we're running out of time. So I want to
Okay.
give you a few minutes to say anything you wish to say that we did not cover. And I hope you'll come back and chat with me again.
I'd
Helen
love
has
to.
chat with me more than once, so it's only
Um,
fair.
uh, I don't know if there's anything necessarily. Um, I do what as I was thinking about chatting to you, Rochelle, I realized that I haven't actually articulated my own diversity story. And so this was a good opportunity for me to do that. And so I appreciate that. And actually I should write it down, because um, it's good to articulate that. Instead of feeling, oh, that's my sense about this or my feeling about that, but rather to say, oh yeah, this is what I've experienced, and these are things I've been able to do about it. These are things I've not been, this is where I've been powerful. This is where I've been powerless, and to recognize that. So, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I hope you'll come back and tell us more, because I've learned a lot here today. So I'm really grateful for that.
Okay.
And I think that you should always think that your story is valuable to the next woman that's coming behind you, regardless of what her background or where she comes from or what she's done. It's good to have someone who's been there before you and done this, because in order to do it successfully yourself, you have to have a model. You may
Yes.
not be able to emulate everything that person's done, but you have to have a model. And I think you were a perfect example of that. And I'm very grateful you
Thank you.
agreed to come chat with me. I wish you and Educause all the best. Thank you. Educause publishes some of my chats, so that's very, very wonderful. And hopefully they'll publish this one as well. But
Oh
I'm
yeah.
really excited to have the partnership I have with Educause, but I'm also really excited to have these stories, because although they hurt me, I think they do others a world of good. So thank you so much for coming and joining me.
Thank you, Rochelle, for inviting me, and I'd love to chat again.
Absolutely. So I am going to send you a link to this chat once it converts. And I am going to turn off the recording, because I do have a question to ask you now. So give me just 1 second, please.